Hey yo! Welcome to Benchwarmers, a WOSO podcast, episode 31. 31 for all your Georgia Stanway fangirls out there, all your Yamashita fangirls out there, which is me included. Her performance in the Asia Cup. I don't actually think for Japan she's 31, but I know for City she's 31. But I don't know, 31. Do you have any 31s? No.
Yeah, Smilla Holmberg.
Smilla
Holmberg.
Smilly. There we go. But I mean, three very good 31s, a holy trinity of 31s. Wait, if Stanway goes to Arsenal, will Smilla will just get draped 31, I assume? There's no way she doesn't get 31.
I wonder if we lose some players and then she becomes a new number.
No, there's no way. She's got 31 tattooed on her body. There's no way.
Point. That's a really good point.
They will drape Smilla. They'll be like, Smilla, we'll give you 50k extra, just non-refundable. You have to change number. Like, I remember in Mensa when United had Cavani and then Ronaldo came and they just took the 7 off him. I was just like, Georgia Stanway is here. You are no longer 31. That's in the clause.
Because I thought that when Katie McCabe would leave, I thought that Olivia Smith would get the 11. But I wonder maybe they'll give Smilla the 11.
That would be crazy. Yeah, that would be nuts. But we will start with domestic football. There is no Champions League this week, luckily for Arsenal. They needed to focus on a different competition, which didn't go so well. We're going to start in England. We're going to start with the FA Cup. My favourite domestic cup. Leggy's least favourite domestic cup.
For the women.
Yeah, for the women. Yeah, I mean, for the men as well.
Even though we've won it like 11 times.
Yeah, the men, you've men have won it 12 times.
No,
14 times, but you're not going to win it this year. And you're not going to win it in the women's as well because of a performance and a half from Vidicic and Brighton ball. Fran Kirby, like Pernilla Harder, still haunting Arsenal even beyond her years, squeezing the last lemons out of her career and producing a performance that will be remembered for the ages, really, in a tapestry of a football career that is Fran Kirby's football discography.
Well, I think before I mention Arsenal, I think it's only fair to give kudos to Brighton and specifically Fran Kirby. I think people forget Fran Kirby is a legend of the WSL. She has, I still believe, the most goals for Chelsea, despite Sam Kerr still playing for the club and reaching that milestone very soon. And she is now becoming a midfield maestro in the same way that a lot of players of that generation at the latter stages of their England career, in their WSL career, are becoming more midfielders in that traditional sense. And I think particularly when you're pinning her up against someone like Kim Little, you do see that with Fran Kirby, she has a team around her in that team that just had more belief than Arsenal. They had a better system set up than Arsenal. And I think if we look back to the games that Brighton have played against Arsenal in the last 12 months, this has been coming. It did come last season. They beat us 5-2. It was very close in our first game of the season. It was only a 1-0 courtesy of an Olis Leggers
own goal, yeah.
And then this game was pretty much the opus of all that build-up. Vidicic had a fantastic game as manager because he knew exactly our weaknesses. He knew how to get at us very easily, including packing the midfield and really winning those 1v1s. But more so, I think going back on that belief point, and I think what Renee will say after this game internally, probably not to the press, but especially internally, is that this is a trust the process game. This is much like a Liverpool last season in the same cup. We start losing games because we need to ready ourselves for a Champions League run. Do I think that Champions League run is worthy of jumping out of all of these competitions? Not really. No. But I think at this point in time, given the number of players out for us, we still have people coming back. given the fact that I believe we're going to be facing a tougher Lyon than we did last season, potentially a tougher Bayern or Barca than last season. These may be other consequences of a campaign for a double.
I do get that, but there's no like you don't go into this game
Mm.
like trying to lose it. You don't ever like facilitate that narrative. Like I love that narrative. Like you know me, I'm the
Hmm.
probably the
Yeah.
most pessimistic fan there is. Like I thought we needed to lose in the
Mm.
Conti. We needed to lose to Chelsea to facilitate our league
Hmm.
form, and I thought a double was only possible with the depth we have. Obviously, it's like one-off game, but it's just another thing to focus on. And I
Yeah.
think you're right in saying that you don't have that one extra game, those two extra games. This one would have been against Liverpool, and then maybe a Chelsea final, a London derby final at the end. But the reality is that you're always trying to win that game. But the problem was that I actually ascribe this game very similar to the City Brighton game that
Mm.
happened really early on in the start of the year, which we know Vidicic and Brighton are very capable of that high press, pushing against the back line that isn't your like full strength,
Yeah.
isn't your full strength back line, doesn't have the ability to play out from the back the way you were doing at the end of last year, specifically
Mm.
against Barcelona's press in that final, against Lyon's press. There were just moments where you looked shoddy, and Fran Kirby took advantage of that.
Hmm.
And look, there's a lot of luck that's involved in every football game. I don't think Haley has hit a ball like that this
Yeah.
season, and
Very
that was
true.
an absolutely splendid strike. That was a deserved goal. That's not probably the one I would expect to go in. I think Charlie Rule had two shots blocked on the line, and I thought that you guys had a great chance set up by Kelly for Stina, and Stina didn't take that chance. That was probably the biggest chance you had for the game.
I think it was
And
Holmberg. I think that
well,
1v1 with the volley was Holmberg.
oh no, there was that one as oh it was,
And
yeah, it was Holmberg, but Stina set Kelly and then Kelly
Mhm.
whipped it
Yeah.
across. That's right. And Ndosia is a top three shot stopper in the league. I
Yeah.
think the way she made that save and the way she made multiple saves in this game, I think the second goal, the header from Hayes, is very impressive. But also, I know you love Laia Kadena. I don't know why she's
Yeah.
come off the back post. I think she probably could have headed it off out of the line and been another goal line clearance for Arsenal.
Mm.
But I think the problem is that when you come up against prior world class talent and they take advantage of your midfield running power, like Fran Kirby is a player who can only play 1 out of 3 games. She doesn't play midweekers. She doesn't always play every week in the league. She can only pull up for the moments she's ready for, and she didn't. I don't think she played much of the. I mean, she didn't play the weekend before because we didn't have WSL. We didn't have WSL in that way, but I think that having the break and having the ability to set up, be fresh for this game really showed when she put in a performance for like I don't think you'll ever get a performance like that from a player that isn't in the top four teams. Like I think you could argue she's the best non-top four player just purely on ability and legacy in the WSL.
And I think we've had that in the WSL for a while now. We've had a few seasons where some footballers who traditionally we would usually see in the top four teams have aged out of those teams for respect and are now showing their class in a team that it's not a young team. It is quite an experienced team. I think in terms of their age, it's basically like a point 0.6 off of us who had a 28-year-old average side. Going on Arsenal, you mentioned it earlier. We did not have our traditional lineup, but I take issue with the fact that we call our second string team a second string team because this team, this quote unquote B team, is one of, if not the best still in the WSL.
Better than most.
Better than most in terms of as quote unquote second string. So I argue that if we are to blame the fact that we didn't play someone like Alessia Russo, that we didn't play Caitlin Ford or Olivia Smith or Katie McCabe, even Emily Fox, then you'd be denying or you'd be undermining all the work that we have done in building a second squad. This has been, in my opinion, building from 23-24. We had a mass influx of young talent coming in 23-24. And then from that, we built a second squad. And for the last 2 seasons, you'd actually seen that flourish because we have stars now who used to be in the second string team, now in our first team. And to say that this is now a game that we can easily just drop and B, that we are not of the same as Chelsea, of the same as Barca, of the same as Bayern to compete on all fronts would be just completely undermining all the work that we have done. And I think that we'd won a Champions League and that's fantastic. But the domestic glory, ever since we won that 23-24 Conti Cup, has evaded us. And as a traditionalist in that football sense, I am all in favor of domestic trophies over continental trophies, which I believe is probably a controversial take. I think that focusing on the WSL, focusing on these traditional cups that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were dominating in, just for legacy's sake, we should be staying in these cups as long as possible.
Of course, and like traditional Arsenal fans, like if I told you at the start of the year, would you rather the FA Cup or the Champions Cup?
Yeah.
You'd rather the FA Cup, barring the patch in the middle of the shirt.
I was just going to say that patch,
yeah,
yes.
but barring the patch in the middle of the shirt, I think there's more legacy, there's more history. It's again within the Menso, yes, it's the oldest cup in the world, but in WOSO, it's a very old historic cup. It's important to win it, and it also, I mean, if you talk to any manager that's in the WSL, they talk about domestic trophies being the springboard to bigger and better things. And as soon as you win these kind of things, it sets up the precedent for what the future is to come. And I think we have a look, like I don't know, I want to focus more on like what the future is for Arsenal in this season. Obviously the goal is the Champions League, right? I think we're slowly starting to accept that the league is a bit further apart.
There's
Obviously,
no more quadruple.
Yeah, there is no, well, I mean, there's not even a quadruple. You have to say treble now because it's gone by the merit of the cup, not even the league. I thought the league would be the one cutting it out from a treble to a double, and now you'd be looking at a cup double with the Champions League and the Champions Cup, which makes it a Champions double,
that's
which
true.
you can start waffling about that. But I would say I would look at Brighton. I wonder if Leon would have watched this game, whether Geraldez is watching this game. The three at the back, pseudo five at the back that Brighton were playing, that was aggressive, high, putting pressure on your back four. I wonder if that's an option. I know Geraldez isn't like the most, like he's pretty basic and modern in his formational status. I think it's very obvious he likes to play with that midfield three. He likes to play with those wide wingers and then isolate the striker to allow them space to work their own magic, especially when you have Katoto and Ada as your magic in the middle. But I wonder if there is now a motive to go, okay, we've just seen Brighton facilitate very high percentage chances and high quality chances. If you look at the you don't even have to you can watch. You don't have to look at the stats. You can just watch the game and see the ability of Brighton to facilitate. It doesn't matter that Arsenal had more shots. It didn't matter that, I mean, Arsenal had less shots on target, but they had more shots. They created a lot of chances, but because they were flooding their back three, the Vanegas, Hayes, and Minami box didn't allow you to take very high percentage chances, and that's why you didn't even score. And this is the second game in a row that you haven't scored. This is two losses in a row. Two losses in a row, which is also the first time you've had that in probably this season, I would say. But I think that I'd be looking at this thinking to myself that I can get at Arsenal on the front foot, not necessarily sitting and holding, because I think Arsenal plays off the fact being the chasers, not really the holders of the football.
I think, yes, I 100% agree. And I think one of the things I told you, or I said on the podcast, was in the Chelsea game last week, was that as a supporter, I was a bit anxious because we were leading and we were the leaders, and Chelsea were the ones who had to catch up with us. Going into this Lyon game, if I were Giraldez, I wouldn't be looking at this game. I would be looking at the first leg of the Chelsea game and then how we responded in the second leg, because obviously we are in these ties where, look, I think, just a bit of a preview, I don't think that we're going to get a result out of the first leg. I think it's all based in the second leg for the Lyon result. I think that the impetus is on Lyon, if I'm being honest. And I think what Arsenal will be looking at is not this game, because this game is not the benchmark. It's the games that we have dominated sides possession-wise and then use that in our clinicalness. And I think this game was very reminiscent of the old Arsenal, the Arsenal from late 2025, where we were lamenting on how many missed chances on the ball holding rather than the execution of shots. And I think one of the bright spots really in this game was, and one of the bright spots of the last couple of weeks, has been Chloe Cully. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, the cross to nearly goal to Holmberg. Holmberg was also incredible. I don't think we had bad players. I just think we had bad moments. And in those bad moments, Brighton capitalised.
I mean, your schedule as well in the coming weeks. I mean, I believe the Villa game has been postponed for you because, I mean, you guys always have a game with Villa that's postponed like every year.
I think it's three postponed games now.
Yeah, so you, Everton, and the Leicester game is the catch-up round as well, which is going to be an interesting game just based on how you're going to manage the Lyon legs in between them. But I think the Lyon leg, I don't know, the first, you say that it's all about the second leg. I think the first leg being at home for you, you do have a lot of like again, I know it's a bit of a deja vu of last year in the sense of that they did beat you at your ground and you beat them at theirs. But I think they look so dangerous at the Groupama that I don't even think it's like, again, I would be expecting you to go into that game either drawing or winning. I think you should be beating them at home. You should be cementing your fortress as you move into the final, as you move into the back end of this year. I know you don't have that many home games left in the season. You play Brighton away, you play Liverpool away, and you play Everton at home. But I still think that the fear of, I believe it's the Emirates. I don't think you're playing it. You're going to play Lyon at the Emirates, which should be a sellout crowd. It's two of the top 5 teams in the world going at each other, and I think. Look, it's weird seeing two red signs ahead of you against one of the best teams in the world, arguably the best team in the world, and I think that this is a big opportunity for Lyon to capitalise, whether it's in the air, a lot of the moments in the air that you kind of looked shaky, set pieces. Which, I mean, we'll get to the Lyon game in the Coup de Féminine in the semi-final because they were very much testing out their aerial threats, but I think that there is a lot of games that are exciting for Arsenal to come up, and it's going to make or break this season, and it's probably going to make or break Renee in a lot of ways. I don't know how good this season will look if you end up with nothing at the end of it, but ultimately it is a very real possibility. And I mean, even when we look, we might get to it later, but Martin playing in the middle, if that was Geraldine Reuteler, that is the real question. And you guys have been linked with her. There is a very high possibility of her coming into that 10 position, whether that means Russo goes forward, whether it means she comes off the bench or plays in these kind of games when you're knee deep in the Champions League and you need a high quality world-class player, in my opinion, to be on the bench, to come into the starting 11 and dominate the game on her own, because I feel like Marnham, there's a time where I would think Marnham could be that, but I just don't think she's taking games by the scruff of the neck in the same way.
Well, we mentioned it earlier this season. You blamed it on system. I blamed it on player. I still hold that it's player. I think with Renee, you mentioned it. I don't think she's on the chopping block at all. She just has so much leverage, and the way that she has been able to galvanize this group of players, it's something that is like embedded within the Arsenal philosophy.
The players love her. That's not a question. But how many? But again, it becomes this. Then
how many seasons?
How many seasons? Like, what are you winning? If next year we have the same thing where you have this admirable campaign with 0 trophies, ultimately football is checks and balances. I'm very much of me and you, both of us talk about the romantic side of football and the importance of being able to rationalize and justify people like Arteta, who haven't won a lot of things for the men, but are developing an ideology, a philosophy, and I think Renee does have that. But I also think that there are checks and balances when it comes to WOSO specifically, because the margins are so thin. But I think that I think it is a mentality thing when it comes to the domestic cups. You didn't really show it against. It's not like you went out to Chelsea or us or even. If you went out to Tottenham, it would be a different question. But it's going out to a team that I'd probably expect you to beat in a lot of ways. But again, world class from Fran Kirby. As we move into the Chelsea Spurs game, the London rivalry, moving from one Chelsea legend to another Chelsea legend, in the fact that there was some really ripper moments from classy Chelsea players as a whole. I mean, obviously it's not the 3rd highest goal scorer in the WSL in Fran Kirby, but the 7th highest goal scorer in the WSL in Samantha Kerr, who scored a pretty ripping header. Where was this in the Asia Cup, by the way? I know she did score the opening goal, but that was like a ripping header from forward to her, whereas this was a fantastic 1-2 between Nuskin and Kira Walsh, I believe, and then Walsh whips it across, and then Kerr heads it about top left corner, post and in, which was a very, very impressive chance. But I think it's just so remarkably clear when you watch them that Lauren James has started to run their games a lot more in ways that you can only ascribe to the players like Lauren James and the Claudia Pinas of the world that can take the game on by themselves from that distance out and make the game look easy. I had a discussion with a few friends of mine, and I'm like, the thing that Lauren James's attribute that is so remarkable is how easy she makes the game for someone who is not necessarily the fastest player. She is strong, but she's not necessarily the strongest player, but her timing, her breaks, her ability to control the game. It makes me frustrated that she can't do it for an entire season, right? This is a player that can do it for 8 to 10 weeks at the end of a season, but Chelsea needed this earlier. Chelsea needed this when Sam was out in the Asia Cup. Chelsea needed this when Aggie Beaver-Jones went 4-4 and she needed some support on the right side. It's a bit leaving a lot to be desired I'm not a Chelsea fan, but if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be thinking, why have you turned up for this game when in the league we had a blip for about a month. We came up against Arsenal and you had one great moment, and then in that second leg provided very minimal efforts, or not minimal efforts, but minimal output and product. And I think to myself, she's this a player with all the ability in the world. I just think like there are players that would kill to have that ability and then have the mindset to attack it. Like imagine Erin Cuthbert had a fraction of Lauren James's creative brilliance.
I think if you're seen as a world-class player, then there must be world-class expectations. And so when it comes down to seeing Lauren James as a full season, every tournament player, I still think that there is room to grow. I think that she has the capability to do it. I think it's all internal. I think that the players around her 100% facilitate her more than I believe most teams and most systems would. Contrary to popular belief, I don't think that she would be able to do it outside Chelsea, in the sense that I don't think that there is another club out there that is so willing to take on a player like Lauren James and all the things that she needs around her to work. Like she needs a striker to be able to do off-ball runs. She needs a midfield to cover her when she goes
when she's not tracking back.
She needs a fullback. In this case, it was Neve Charles. In other cases, it could be whoever is on that left-hand side.
Lucy, Ellie, yeah.
Who is willing to cover her. And I think that she wouldn't fit into a Barcelona. I would struggle to see her fit into a Bayern, and I think she wouldn't fit into a Lyon for the fundamental reason that she's world class at Chelsea. And that is a great thing. And in this game, she showed it. She was phenomenal. Her, Sam Kerr, these are the games for those players. And I think Spurs, to their credit, they came back in this game very much like Aston Villa. It's one of those what-if games. It's like if we just had that extra spark, if the players like Gorpset, who we want to come in, like Tanberg, who's had a pretty decent season. Beth England's now done it twice in a couple of weeks in terms of, bringing a team back, not necessarily on the scoreline in this week she did, but in terms of momentum building. But I'm looking at Spurs and I'm going, just player for player, there is a greater class in Chelsea, but also player for player, Lauren James is the best player on that park, and it's because the team around her can facilitate her.
100%, but also I would say Sonia, for Sonia, there's a learning curve of working with Lauren James. I think there was a lot of chat halfway through the season that's like she can't tame her, she can't facilitate for her, it doesn't work like that. It's only Emma Hayes unlocked it. Serena Weigman clearly has unlocked it despite a stepping on a Nigerian player. I think she did kind of manage the Lauren James of that World Cup quite well. I mean, she did get to the final and then they won the Euros and she was a part of that too. And I think Lauren James is one of those players that just needs a man manager that can facilitate for her and can recognise there are moments where you're going to get brilliance out of her and you just put her on the park and wait for the brilliance to happen. But the brilliance in this game came from Samanen, who hit a dead ball as pretty much as perfect as you can to tie up the game between Tottenham and Chelsea. But it was more and more brilliance. The individual brilliance that came out in this game, it didn't really feel like an ideological battle or a system battle. It was just masterful moments. And who else but Vila Buurman from 88 88th minute, 22 yards out, not 88 yards out in the 22nd minute. It's 88th minute from 22 yards out, but that edge of the box perler, I did not know she had that in her locker. It's an absolutely ridiculous strike from a 19-year-old to win an FA Cup quarterfinal, which is, shock and misery. And then Olivia Holt absolutely robbed Erin Cuthbert of the ball. In the 90th minute, she carries the ball about 30, 40 yards, lays it off to Tanberg, and I think Tanberg is probably having recurring nightmares about that strike that just dragged a bit too far wide of Hannah Hampton. But that means that Chelsea have made it through to the semi-finals on one side, Brighton have made it through on the other side, and to meet Chelsea on their side at the bridge is my team, Manchester City, who had a very interesting game against the Blues. Birmingham City, who weren't bad and are likely to be the team that come up to the WSL next season. They are currently level on points, I believe, with Charlton, just with a ridiculously higher amount of goal difference, and I think they will hold on and end up being the next WSL side. And look, if they defend like that, they stay miserly, they will end up with points. I think they're pretty tough to play, especially at home. That was a very interesting experience. But we did have a few changes from the derby. We had Coombsy in, Viv obviously injured, obviously not going to be playing the international break. Bene came in at right back for Caspi, and then we had Uabi come in for Kanak, and AG moved to her OG position in left centre back. But it was basically honestly, this game was kind of like watching the Matildas in the Asia Cup in a lot of ways. I think we just tried to blitz them in the first 10 minutes and then hold out the game from there. But it was, flooding out the game. We got a chance creation moment between this player right here, Yui Hasegawa, who was probably, a lot of people's player of the match. I think it was either Bene or Coffee. I think Coffee was spectacular again. But Hasegawa wins it, plays a 1-2-3 actually with Iman Bene. Bene runs the field and then plays that ridiculous ball across straight into the path of, you guessed it, Bunny Shaw, who scored in the 8th minute. It was an early goal. Basically, as perfect as I could have dreamed it. The only thing that's missing from it is a Mary Fowler half turn. I think that would have been my Roman Empire goal ultimately if Mary was involved in that goal somehow. But we were pretty mid in our chance creation for, I would say, the next hour and 10 minutes of this game. Hempo had a moment where she put it wide. Hempo had another blocked shot from the edge of the box that fell to Bunny, and then Bunny hit this weird low-driven slow P-roller that hits the post. Just not our efforts, not efforts that you expect Bunny or Hempo to not necessarily score, but not necessarily execute like that. We had a Fujino strike in the 30th minute that was off target, but our fast build-up play is conducive to more chances. A good chance creation is more important than facilitating slow, controlled wing, pass the ball around the D area of the pitch from I take it from the corner to about 30 yards in that semicircle, and I think we could have done a lot better in facilitating better chances for our better players. And I think late on it showed when Hasegawa had a long shot parried into the crossbar. Kanak hit the crossbar with a header, and Carolyn lofted that beautiful ball to Hasegawa, which was really nice. But again, great saves from their goalkeeper. It wasn't meant to be to have another goal in this game, but they didn't really look like scoring ever. People would argue that the crossweight moment where they bomb the ball forward and then Kiara Keating bombs it out and absolutely collects crossweight should have been a red by Dogzoing, but it should have been a foul on Kiara Keating, to be honest. She gets the ball, she clears it, and then crossweight runs into her. So I don't know how that wasn't a foul on Keating. But again, it was a very aggressive crowd, very loud crowd, especially in my ears watching the game. But I think, I mean, it's just one of those games you kind of just take on the chin. You don't really learn much from it in the sense of, like, we do have a bit more rotational status, the ability for AG to play centrally as well. I actually am starting to prefer her at left back. Just the ability to create from the left side is much better than Uabi. We did have Knack come on and then Uabi came off, so they did rotate back to that. And I just think we had a very solid game, and we made the right decisions in terms of the personnel for this game, and I'm hoping that we come up against Chelsea with the same might as the Etihad game. Obviously, they did beat us at the Bridge, and that was very, very early on this year. Time to flip the script and take on that FA Cup tie on the 10th of May with some real venom and vitriol, in the sense of that this is the former champions. We are about to be the current champions, and this is time to win a double. This is how you win a double. This is the moment where you hit Chelsea for a second time. Like this, Chelsea will want the domestic cup double, no question about it. They are allergic to silverware, but if we beat Brighton in the WSL and then we beat Liverpool, this is Gazball. It'll be Gazball to win the league, yeah? So that game against Gazball is to win the league, and then Chelsea is to basically, I think we beat Brighton or Liverpool on the other side, but we'll get to the Liverpool game soon. But that game basically cements whether Chelsea get a domestic cup double. And it's no disrespect to Brighton or Liverpool, but the venom and the money and the extent to which being in a cup final, what it means to those players is so crucial. But I think it would be poetic if we played against Liverpool twice to settle the title and then to settle the FA Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like Arsenal, like in the early 2000s, the men would have. I mean, I think we beat Tottenham, we beat all these teams at their home grounds. It's like one of those cultural,
the chance,
like,
all the chance, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those like funny coincidences. I think if I take the Birmingham perspective here and then like have a move on to Charlton, I think these two teams are so ready for the WSL in ways that I haven't seen teams coming up be ready for a long time. I think a lot of people thought LCL would be that team, and like we fundamentally disagreed. We thought that they overpacked. Birmingham and Charlton have players who are very, very good in the system that they're playing. This system that they played against, informed WSL sides, Liverpool included in that, was compact, kind of rugged, disgusting football. But we haven't seen, outside of their WSL2 performances, which have been, goals and interesting and exciting football, attacking brand of football against WSL sides. That's what gets me excited about next year, because of that fact that two teams are coming up. And that's going to be very, very interesting in terms of how we're going to level out this league, because, we're still seen as a top four league in terms of only four teams really competing every year. And I think we've mentioned it before. What is that pack going to look like with an increase of teams? What's that pack going to look like when relegation becomes more of a thing? I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have three teams being relegated eventually. So Charlton, Birmingham, we can go on to the Liverpool game, Charlton specifically. I think in terms of defensive effort, to leave it so late for Liverpool, it's just a testament to them. I think Liverpool had a fantastic game. They had 2 goals ruled out.
So many chances, Jesus Christ. So many chances.
But at the end of the day, you got to commend Charlton for the ability to go and take out a team that is in form, that has a vigor about them, especially in cups. This is their second season in a row making the semi-final of an FA Cup.
Yep, 100%. And look, another day, this Liverpool game is really 3-4-0. Like, O'Sullivan doesn't miss that every time. Martha Thomas probably should have scored. Who was the other one? There was another one. Beata Olsen set up Martha Thomas as well, I believe. So there was the handball one and then the flick on for the offside. So there were some like ridiculous moments where on another day, there is just more goals, and this is settled in regulation time. But you have to respect the moment that it was, the moment that happened in the 108th, 110th minute. Doesn't really matter when. 115th. Zara Shaw, 18-year-old, off the back of an ACL to get the winner. Jenna Clark headers the ball into the post, then collects it again, headers it into the crossbar. And I thought she'd get another one and headed it into the other post and do the fastest woodwork historic challenge in FA Cup history, but it was Zara Shaw, and remember the name because it is just box office. The Liverpool comms were unbelievable as well. I think I want to believe you about the Charlton Blues thing, and like if they come up and they can settle, I just think the level is so different. The level between the WSL2 and the WSL is so different. And yes, a one-off game against Liverpool, a one-off game against City, who are going to be the eventual champions, is different. But when you're playing Villa week in, week out, and then you go to Brighton, and then you go to Chelsea, and then you go to the Emirates, it's draining. It is so draining. And we saw for every LCL that has the ability to do it, there's a Palace that didn't. And I think about those teams that have come and gone. Crystal Palace was the big one where I was like, you know what, they actually do have some young players who can do the things. And when they play each other, it's going to be an amazing game, and we'll love that and we'll watch that. And even when they play against a team like Liverpool, who are developing, and Brighton, who are on the Evertons, the lower end of the WSL currently, not necessarily Leicester. I do wonder if Leicester will actually come back up as a yo-yo club. I don't even know if that's the possibility right now, but I just think to myself, I don't want to get ahead of it in the sense of that they are playing really good football in the WSL2, but we have to remember it is the WSL2, and there's only been one club in the last 3-4 years, and that's LCL, because they had the immaculate investment that allowed them to hold on to players that usually sit in that 6th to 10th part of the table. They aren't players that sit in a team that come up and say we're a part of this new project. And maybe that does incentivize players to go to Charlton, to go to teams like the Blues, but also again it comes to a semblance of a thing we spoke about last week that you don't necessarily agree with, but living in Birmingham isn't the most exciting precedent. I've been to Birmingham. It's not the greatest place in the world. It's not like you can just go on nights out and have a great time and live there like it's happily ever after. It's not the easiest sell for a player. Also, when the last 4 clubs who've done it, you're setting up on the idea that the goal is to stay in the league, not necessarily sit further up.
I agree with you 1,000% in terms of the level difference, in terms of the literal challenge is to go from the WSL2 to the WSL. I also think, though, it's not necessarily on the teams coming up that I'm more focused on. I think the pressure is on the established teams, like what we've seen with Leicester, Everton, Liverpool, the likes, to improve. Because as much as the WSL2 teams, like there's 2 teams coming up now. It's not just one, it's 2. And that's going to put pressure on these teams. And I think Leicester have been a product of their own consequence, because they are the team that didn't invest in their women's side.
Yeah, they didn't sign enough players. Yeah,
they didn't sign enough players, and I fundamentally believe that is a club-wide issue. I think that this is why Leicester are a yo-yo side and they aren't an established WSL side. But if 2 sides come up and they have genuine ambitions, kind of like LCL, to actually become a mainstay in the WSL, then that puts pressure on teams to invest more in the women's side. And I think that's just a better thing for the whole league, because you lose money if you go down ultimately, and these clubs don't want to lose money.
100%. And I think that also comes into clubs like Everton, clubs like Villa, clubs like Tottenham, clubs like even going up to United. Like sometimes the importance of the domestic cup is purely pride, not monetary, right? Like you get more money for finishing higher in the WSL than you do for winning a cup. Like that's just the reality of the situation, that placing higher in the table will facilitate you more funds. And also boards, directors will act on league score, not necessarily cup runs. And I think that's crucial. But that is all we have for the FA Cup as we move to the Bundes. Not necessarily the Bundes, just German football as we talk about the Pokal, the semi-finals. We had Bayern versus Essen. This game was I think it was a little bit blueprinting for the semi-final in a lot of ways, the UWCL, because, I mean, a lot of players were left out of the starting 11, I believe, in terms of not necessarily their best 11, but I think it was a lot of their best. Just the centre halves were the big change. So if I'm not mistaken, they had Balisaga and Magdalena Eriksson as their centre back pair pairing compared to when they usually have Gilles and Vigos. And I know that's not a huge difference to their normal 11, but to change both centre halves, to have a completely different centre back pairing is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, and they made it look relatively easy. Ariana Caruso, not robbed, but a cracking volley that was called offside. Great ball from Gwyn. Shame to not be a goal, but it was just too easy in a lot of ways. I think Essen they kind of knew what was coming. It's just about when, and I think it was Gwyn playing that back heel to Tanikawa, and Tanikawa finishing the first goal. But it was Ket's ball to Gwyn, which was perfect. And then it actually started with Balenciaga and Magdalena Eriksson playing the ball to Stanway in this very deep, what I can only ascribe as a quarterbacking position. And I started thinking to myself, when was the last time I saw this kind of play from a holding midfielder sitting so deep? And it made me think back to, I believe it was 2 seasons ago, in the Menso Champions League, when Toni Kroos was running around in the Champions League final playing as the deepest player for Real Madrid. And I think to myself that that's this kind of role that I think they're going to test out for Stanway, where ultimately they're coming up against Barcelona. They're coming up against the highest pressing, the highest, most aggressive side, the best, the creme de la creme. Everyone would say if everyone on paper is playing in their top prime, they're going to beat them. But the problem is that you can't have Gilles and Vigos having the ball and getting pressed by the best of the best and expect them to just be able to lap the ball around, pass it around with technical brilliance. So I wonder whether they're testing out this quarterbacking Stanway play so that they can set up a bit more saturated behind the ball and then facilitate greater inbound passing, greater line-breaking passing, and just like greater technical ability deeper in the pitch so that they can break the ball forward more in a lot more innovative ways.
I think it's funny that you mentioned that. I in terms of the Toni Kroos-esque player, I'm thinking more like the Pirlo type, the Mezzala of the
same thing, yeah,
of the midfield
in a lot of ways.
In terms of just like that little dink over the top, the nice slice ball, the fact that they have fullbacks like Gvin willing to bomb on, so you just have overloads on the flank to allow Georgia Sandway the option to go wide or go inside the central pocket. But I mean, in all intents and purposes, it's not really about Georgia Sandway. I don't think that Bayern have a shoe in terms of the midfield. I think it's in terms of the defense, and I think what comes with the defensive performance of Bayern comes also an attacking performance, because they are equally, like, their defense starts the attack. They're also fantastic aerially in the box.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but Georgia Stanway is going to be one of those players where I think she will heavily rely upon her defense behind her. And I think that she will be looking to exploit pockets that Barcelona will probably be leaving because of the fact that they'll be attacking so much. So the defenders will have to be on point. They'll have to be able to cover Georgia Stanway. But I think you're really correct in terms of having that player situated in the center of the park and just distributing.
Yeah, but I also think it depends on what line, because if she's sitting in front of Alexia, if she's sitting in front of, I mean, there's allegations that Aitana Bonmati might be ready for the second leg of this fixture, which is just what is in the water in
It's the same thing at City. It's the same thing at City.
I mean, yeah, but ours are like, we ease them in against like Liverpool. We don't have them playing against. We don't have like Mary coming back for a bank derby. No, it is. No, it's so Aitana coded. It's hilarious. Exactly. It's like, who else, right? Yeah, she has got that aura. But I just do think that there was something weird about like seeing these moments where Stanway is behind the centre halves saying, you guys push up a little bit, let me play this long ball. And that's what ended up happening for Tanikawa's second, when she went, it wasn't her second, she went from scorer to assister and played that cross to Pernilla Harder, who towers over Essen victim, I guess. That's what I'm going to call them. It was just a bit of fortune that it hit the goalkeeper, made a bit of a mess of the ball. But this jump and header, this stand and jump from Pernilla Harder just got me thinking about like the best sides in the world as well. So like we have Bunny and Kanak, you have Lessie and Stina in a lot of ways that can header and be that aerial threat. Lyon have Wendy and Ada, Barca have Irina, and Bayern now have Gilles, Harder, and now Imade. So the aerial moments, regardless of how good Barcelona will be, every corner should be seen as a victory for Barcalas and Bayern, because to have Penila Harder, to have Edna Imade, to have Vanessa Gilles and Vigos, who's been on ridiculous. I didn't even mention Vigos Dottir, who's been on ridiculous headed form in the last 2.5 weeks. Those four should be seeing every corner as an opportunity to bury a goal. And obviously it's not going to happen in the sense of you can't score every corner you take. If that were the case, then Arsenal men's would be the best team ever made. But ultimately, the game was effectively over once Imade started getting her head involved in this game, and Essen were failing to clear these loose balls, and then Imade pounced with that header for the 3-0 just before the half. Perfect time to score. But this is also playing into Bayern's history, right? So like I think about the best Bayern teams that I watched in my lifetime, at least: the Lewa, the Mandzukic, Mario Gomez, Muller, Hummels, Boateng, just giants, just German giants towering over. They can tower over the box, and then having facilitators that are for those aerial threats. So I think about Iron Robin. I mean, we've got Clara Bull, Clarion Robin, right? Clarion Robul, and then Stanway Steiger in the holding midfield. Like, they've got a team that is almost nearly like pound for pound, attribute for attribute, so similar to some of the best sides we've seen in Menso this century. So I am very excited. Like, we did talk about Bayern being that dynasty. This is what that dynasty is. It's reminiscent of their Menso side in the 21st century. And then Imade got a second header from that Barbara Dunst cross. And I mean, I don't know how many moments Barbara Dunst has had this year for Bayern, but it's good to see her on in a semi-final, just doing the business for Imade's 7th GA in, 6 games? Absolutely insane. She's been at Bayern for 2 months since the... Imagine if Imade had... Sociedad had Imade for this last brick of the season. They would have probably ended up second,
Imagine if Bayern had trusted Imade instead of Schuler. I mean,
that's true. That's a better question.
I don't think it's crazy to say that Imade has been a better player for Schuler than Schuler in the Bayern colours this season.
In the last calendar year, yes.
This season, I mean, this season, from the start of the season onwards, because Schuler did not have a good Euro. She didn't have a good start of the Bayern season, and that's why they let her go.
One good game at the Euros, and that was it.
And that was it. And Imade has proven to be a player that has grown into this season. It wouldn't.
And if she keeps going. Imagine she's the Spaniard chosen by Germany to knock out the Spanish giants. Like, there is a little bit of poetry in that. That this is probably the best way that Imade can go. You know what, Esther, Jenny, you've had your time. Now it's my time. I'm the Spanish number 1. I'm the Spanish number 9. I've gone to the biggest team in Germany, the team that's won the last 3-4 leagues, and now I'm going to dunk on all of you, because ultimately the one thing I'm good at is the one thing that you can't stop, and it's the fact that, like, we always talk, like, there's all these pundits talking about Bunny Shaw being the best striker in the world, and the things that she can do can't be stopped. Imade has the same attributes. Obviously, Bunny is better at a lot of the things at her feet. Obviously, Bunny is more polished. She's older. We have more experience watching her. We have more footage watching her. But we have been watching Imade all year get only better at the parts of the game that we thought were hindrances, and her aerial ability is pound for pound with Bunny Shaw's. I just think it will just take time. She's raw. She's going to be this uncut gem of a striker, and I'm so excited for her to actually command the respect where we're going into this 2027 World Cup, and it's going to be fucking Pina, Imade, and Salma, or Pina, Athenea, and Imade, and then you can switch and chop with Salma up front. You can just change based on whatever kind of formation or structure or strategy that Bermudez wants to go with. And I think Imade's this like final cog where, like, when will Spain get the 9? When will Spain get the 9? And now we have Bayern's number 9 is the Spaniard.
I think in terms of if if you're talking about aerial threat, I think one of the things that Wolfsburg missed out on in their nil or draw was aerial threat. I mean, they were
Yeah, where's Alex Pop at?
yeah, exactly. Huth was pinging in crosses from that right hand side. I think she had like what at the end of the day, she at least had double digits in crosses that just went absolutely nowhere. But I mean, this was Carl Zeiss. You got to commend them. Like it's same as
Oh, mate, what some saves, some blocks, some crazy stuff.
it's been as like a round of underdogs, really, because like all the way from the WSL to here. I mean, this has been a Carl Zeiss team who's been middling in the Bundes, and they're not a fantastic team, but they had some incredible standout performances, particularly in the defensive line, particularly by their goalkeeper. And on the other hand, VFL just looked completely out of their depth. They looked like they had a lot of baggage weighing over them from that Manchester United game. Like they looked so tired, and they looked like they were really, really struggling to get their mojo in this game. Loose passes, scrappy 1-2s. Like it was just not the Wolfsburg that we came to know, and not the Wolfsburg that is going to beat Bayern in that eventual Pokal final.
I mean, it's sad, but it kind of does make sense in a lot of ways. Not that I'm justifying the moments that happen in the sense of that, like, you got to take on who you come up against, right? And it is a situation where VFL have been knocked out of a competition that they really thought they had a chance of developing something that they maybe didn't necessarily have, in the sense of that, we did think that Lyon would get through, but there was like a little shimmer of hope after that first leg specifically that they toppled the unbeaten run that was Lyon's run this season. But I think to go from the Groupama to to Carl Zeiss's home ground, right, and have to play,
which is massive, by the way.
What is it?
Huge.
It's the ad hoc arena, right? In
massive.
The Ernst Aber Sport Field. Yeah, it's not a small stadium. I think it's 15,000 capacity, 15,500 capacity. But to have the nous, to actually have the mental capacities and faculties to go, okay, I have to be up for this game in a different competition against a different team. You're not playing against Lyon. You have to control the ball. You don't have to be pressed in the same way. It shows, it weeds out the mentally tough from the ones who are going to shell in after the biggest game of the season you've just lost. And I think that Carl Zeiss had a lot more effective chances. Linda, you mentioned it before, the right side. Linda had so many crosses. Janina Minga did score a goal, but it was offside. Pettermore's had a long shot that was saved. But I think also Stina Johannes made some really, really good saves as well. So it's not like she wasn't up for the game. She definitely was. And then the penalties were absolutely amazing. This was an amazing penalty shootout. Shout out to Bonsu, Ehlenberg, Reuter and Buurman. I mean, these 4 penalties that started off the penalty shootout, whoever the coach of Carl Zeiss is, I forgot their name. I believe it's Florian Kastner. He got his penalty shootout first for 100%, because those penalties were unsavable. Absolutely unsavable. 2 of them were barring in, no safety. The other 2 were no safety, just in the corners. Absolutely brilliant. I think Pettermore's penalty was probably the best of the VFL penalties, and Bierenstein's was definitely the worst of the VFL penalties. That penalty was so slow, so bad, so close. That was the worst penalty of the shootout. Yeah. But Stina Johannes saving Strasser's penalty kick to keep them in the game for that 5th penalty to win the shootout. She misses. It was actually similar to Bierenstein's penalty, a bit harder than that, but still not hard enough and too close to the keeper. We both knew that Huth was going to score her penalty, obviously, and then Fiona Geischer comes on her return, misses. But this is a great penalty, but it's a really good save. But it's one of those penalties where we, like a lot of goalkeepers talk about, that perfect height to save, and it's like when it's a little bit off the ground, you can make that low diving save, and she made it look easy. And then Smilla Volotto, the Swiss maestro, who has a very, very big future for VFL in the making. But I think, that was an unbelievable penalty to end the shootout, to win the shootout, and ultimately send VFL into that final. I don't know when that final is. I feel like it's in May. It's in early May.
It's after the international break, I think.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of time until that game, and we can preview that game properly, especially when Bayern will be looking the goods. Hopefully, maybe Bayern will have done some amazing things in the Champions League, but I think there's a lot to be desired, especially if you're VFL. You've got to win something. You've got to get one over Bayern in some way, and I think this is the tournament to definitely do it. I think the Pokal is very FA Cup coded in that way. Like, it is kind of the one that they take seriously in a lot of ways, and I think that they definitely won't sit there and sit idly by and shell in. I think they got to go for this one.
Well, I think Wolfsburg have the history behind them. They have the most trophies in this particular tournament. And I think that in terms of, I think they're trying to escape what the inevitable path is, and that's becoming like the Real Madrid of Germany. And I don't think that they want to be the Real Madrid of Germany. They won't want to be the second fiddle to Bayern. They also don't want to be relying on cups as well. Like, I hope that this will give them momentum to then actually genuinely have a competition against Bayern next season. Do I think that's going to be a thing? No, not really. But I think that like they had one really good performance in the Champions League, which was they're both their Lyon performances. You have to give credit to the fact that they drew against Lyon first and then beat them. And then it's going to come down to this game. This is going to be arguably the second biggest game of the season for Wolfsburg. How they face up against, like, for Wolfsburg against Bayern, how will they face up against a team that, will have more football in them? They'll have probably a Barcelona game in them as well, and that's going to have to be tough. So in terms of fitness, in terms of mentality, it'll be interesting to see how they rock up.
Yeah, I think Wolfsburg has a lot to hold their head up. It's not the same as like Real Madrid season. Like, I know Real Madrid had that moment against Paris FC. Like, VFL slapped United up in the Champions League 5-2. I know they copped a 2-0 loss to Real Madrid, and they copped the 2-1 loss to Chelsea, but they did have two big legs against Juve where they clawed it back from 2-0 down and then beat them 2-0 at Juve's home ground. So there is a lot to show in their future, but I just think that if they can get up for these last few games of the Bundes, they win that Pokal final on the 15th of May, I think they can hold their head up with a trophy and say, you know what, we gave it a good go. We'll go back on the chopping block, the Champions League next year. They are just a mainstay in the Champions League. And I think, I don't know, I'd rather be at VFL than Real Madrid in a lot of ways. I think they're more likely to win those domestics. They're more likely to be closer to Bayern than I think Real are to Barca. I think they are in similar stages, and they are that duopoly by omission team, but I think VFL have a lot more grounds to decide, we have history in WOSO, we can invest more, we can be that team that we're supposed to be in a ways, whereas I think Real Madrid is really just running on the idea that they're supposed to be a team that's bigger than they are. So with that, we will finish up with German football and the Pokal as we move to French ball. Not the Arkema, it's the Coupe de France Féminine, the semi-finals, the Lyon-Strasbourg game. This was after the 2-2 first leg. Lyon were looking for blood, especially after that VFL game. This is against Anna Maria Senegorcevic, leading the line for Strasbourg, and it took 3 minutes for probably my second favourite Lyon player in Sophie Svava to open the scoring at the back post from a poorly dealt with corner. Eula Brand taking the corners, and I think there was daggers to the chest for Leggy every time that Eula Brand was whipping this ball in, and then Diani heads it back across the box, and Katoto's scoring bicycle kicks in the first 5 minutes of this game. And I think to myself, it doesn't really matter. The game's done in 5 minutes, but I'm thinking to myself, my best friend, my podcast host, is an Arsenal fan, and we made those comments. Clearly, Geraldez listens to the pod, which is more impressive and more exciting than it should be. But they are practicing those set pieces, those corners.
It was basically training.
It felt like they were training for your lot. It felt like every time they scored, they were giving you eyes for the camera, like, we are gumming for you in North London. Like, we are just going to whip the ball.
Break every time.
Yeah, pretty much. Every time they score, it's look to the camera. And, they just kept pushing aerial attacks from both sides. And look, Brand and Diani, not every cross is going to be great. Some of them are going to be overhit, and that's normal. And I'm sure Geraldez will address that. But Katoto hit the side netting at the 10th minute, and then she got brought down as well in the 16th. I thought it was a Stonewall pen, but no call. But clearly Ada was winning winning penalties. I'm calling racism there, that Ada won 2 penalties and Katoto didn't. So, look, there was a moment in the Asia Cup where Mary Fowler gets absolutely hacked to death, and then EVE got absolutely dived. Like, I think it was EVE or it was Gorry, one of them, absolutely dived 100%, and they gave the foul against Gorry, and they gave no foul against Fowler. And I immediately yelled racism, and then I went to my dad and I went, this is why I can never be a commentator on like a mainstream product. I'm like, it's just the first instinctual thing. I just like, I see Mac get absolutely slashed to pieces, and she yells for it. She's like, how is that not a foul? And then the Svava cross to Ada is so good, and then Ada gets brought down for like, it's not much. There's not much contact in it, but it is a penalty, I guess. And then Renard takes it, scoring a 106th goal for Lyon, sending the keeper the wrong way. 3-0 in 30 minutes. That's basically game over. 34th minute, Svava bouncing a dribbled ball across the box to Ada, and that's exactly the kind of darting run that we know Ada to make. It's the darting run that's been running the UWCL for the last decade. She's so good. She just does the business in those spaces so well. In the 44th minute, Diani found Ada making another drifting run to the right, and then she gets brought down again, another penalty, and this time it's Katoto taking the penalty, lashing it down the middle, making the keeper dive. 5 in the first half is crazy. And then it was later on in the half, about the 68th minute, where Renard, Svava, and Johannes combine for a perfect back up and through that ends up with Selma Basha, who plays it across the box to Marie Antoinette Katoto for her hat-trick. But what a save from Val, the Strasbourg keeper, to stop the hat-trick. But it was 5 minutes later where Corbin Strader, after about 150 million long shots that she took in this game, finally launches that smashing strike for the 6-0. A few other chances with Johannes, Katoto and more, but the score stays 6-0 as they advance to the final. I mean, there's not really much to say. This is Lyon doing Lyon things. I don't know if there's anyone else you want to shout out or anything you want to say.
I just want to say, I think that Eula Brand on that kind of left-hand pocket side of the pitch, I'm really hoping, like this is from an Arsenal perspective, she doesn't become the like Chloe Kelly of Lyon against
she already
us.
is.
No, she hasn't been though. But like in terms of the deep like crosses in to the center of the box and just evading all that traffic up top, which she has been struggling against. She's been struggling 1v1. She kind of has that one movement, which is to kick the ball like in front of the defender or behind the defender in this case, and just try and outrun them. And unfortunately, she doesn't have the pace, which is a bit strange. But throughout the season, she's just like, I felt like she's lost a yard, and I think she's been more concentrated on her like how to get the ball into space rather than how do I actually get the ball when it gets into space. But if she becomes like that deep like cross from that pocket into the center, that's going to cause us a lot of struggle, especially when they have just such aerial dominance. I don't know who their starting lineup is going to be. Ada will probably be playing. Katoto will probably come on. It's just very daunting to know.
Well, yeah, we don't know. They played a 2 up front here. I actually thought their back line, barring Engen, is probably their best other than Salma Basha. Like you play, I'd say it's Basha, Renard, Engen. No. So it'd be Basha, Renard, Engen, and Tarsian. I don't know. They'll probably play Ash Lawrence and Basha, and they'll probably end up playing. They'll probably end up playing Heaps and Johannes in the middle instead of Schrader and Egarola. But ultimately, I would be surprised if Katoto or Hegerberg, either of them are off. I think they're just going to do the 2 up front thing and match your 2 up front in a lot of ways. But Eula Brand has a big opportunity to make Arsenal look a mug on that right side ultimately and try and look, her corners were really good. They've got to be playing for those corners, and no one plays for corners better than Eula Brand because she does it for the German national team, and the German national team has arguably just as good, if not better, aerial threats than Lyon because they have Kanak in the middle, they have Kuva in the middle, they have Alex Pop in the middle, and you have
Alex
Renard.
Pop anymore.
No, but they did. They did have Alex Pop in the middle, but now it's Renard. They have Anyomi in the middle now. So, but they have Renard and they have Ada and they have Katoto, who are going to be the ones they cross it to, and Svava at the back post if she plays. I don't think she'll end up playing against Arsenal, maybe later on in the game. But Eula Brand's got to play a very important role
I
in
don't
this
think she'll
Arsenal
start.
game.
I don't think
Yeah,
she'll
you don't
start,
even think.
honestly.
But who do they play on that left side then?
Just anyone else. I just don't think that she will start. I think they will lock her down so early that they'll be so incompetent on that left hand. Honestly, I hope
I
she
think they'll
starts.
give her an hour. I think they'll
You
give her an
reckon?
hour.
They keep
Yeah.
giving her an hour. That's all they give her.
No. I agree with you in the sense she was much better in the 4-0 win. She was a much better player than she was in the first leg, and I just don't think they have. I just don't think they have another option to bring on unless they're going to play. Look. Chawinga is the natural other choice. Obviously, they have Chawinga and De Mornay, but I don't know how they don't necessarily facilitate very well.
That's the team that came up against us and beat us in the first leg. That to me is what's going to be the replication.
100%. But Diani played in that.
Yeah, Diani played, but
does that mean who of the three of De Mornay, Chawinga, Diani, who's the one you don't play?
Chawinga.
Okay, see,
Chawinga comes on.
Personally, I mean, I think you can't. I think Chewinga's too good to not play, to not start. If you're not going to play Yul LeBron, then it's got to be Diani on the right, and then Chewinga on the left, and De Mornay in the 10. And you play De Mornay in the 10, and you play Lindsay Heaps there. But you play Lindsay Heaps a bit deeper, but they always play Lindsay further up. They've been trusting Corbin Trader to do the job in the middle.
Corbin won't start.
Yeah, but I don't know. That she did start against VFL in that second leg, so
who knows? It wouldn't surprise me if it's Egarola, Johannes, and Haran.
You think Egarola? See, there's so many options. They have so many players to choose from. I think personally, it's going to be Heaps, De Mornay, Johannes. I know that's a very weak, physically weak midfield. Look,
that'd be great for us.
But it's a technically gifted midfield that can match your midfield in a lot of ways, especially from a speed aspect. But yeah, they are going to be managing the UWCL. They're going to be managing not really managing the league. They can do whatever they want in the league because they're so far ahead. But they're going to be managing for this Coup de Feminine final that's coming up against PSG after PSG beat Paris FC in another Parisian, a fun and exciting tale of the Parisian derby, which I believe to be true, right? This is the one. This is Le Bleu Derby. All I wanted was goals, talking trash, and red cards. And we got all three. We got great moments. So 3 minutes in, we had Matteo running in on the goal line, delivering that ball across that was either going to be tapped in by Ondongala or an own goal by De Almeida, and we got the latter. So straight away, 3 minutes in, own goal, De Almeida, put it on the score sheet, rub it in her face. God, De Almeida is like the Neville of Paris FC.
I was just thinking that.
Such
a meme.
We are wavelengths. There's a reason why we are the Benchwarmers. She is the Ash Neville of the Arkema.
It must be the hair thing. I think I was thinking of the hair.
It's the hair. It is the hair thing, but it's also the own goal thing, and it's also just the had moments prior in their yonder, but just don't have as many moments now. But it was Paris FC getting undone by a Karchawi corner and an 18-year-old Anais Ebalen leaping, powerful header, great celebration with Yaya as well, that other 18-year-old player for PSG. Chavas tried to claim it, that high claim, and just comes out too late. And I rate Chavas, but had some stinky moments in this game. Olga recovers a really nice ball, whips it across. Echegini tries to acrobatically scissor it into that near post, hits the near post. Very sad. Some big drama in that ending of the first half, but it's the second half where things start to feisten up. Here we go. This is the Parisian derby we know and love. 48th minute, Matteo plays in Lamogudek and Mbok trips her up late as she's running onto goal. Originally given a yellow card, by the way, which I think is wild, can I just say. I didn't think that was a yellow any day. And then the ref gets VAR, looks over, basically sees that it's last player, gets dogzoed, and Mbok is sent off. PSG become 10 players to make this tie very, very interesting. Lamogudek should have scored, by the way. This moment where she robs Karchawi, the ball flops to De Almeida. Then De Almeida tries to fix the recovery, and Lamogudek robs De Almeida again. That was like a tongue twister right there. And then she earns a one-on-one for all this hard work and pressing, but it was MBE Mary Earps that makes a great one-on-one save. She just lives for it. in this tie. And then Ocean Picard getting absolutely wrecked by Sakina Karchaoui, picks the perfect time to press her, basically off her bad tart. Karchaoui runs at her. She plays Kanjinga, not Chawinga. Chawinga plays for Leon. Kanjinga for the 1-2, and then it's Selena Hossein who brings down Karchaoui for a penalty. The worst thing you can do against 10 players is to bring someone down in the box for a penalty. And then Romeo Lukta, who was relatively unsighted all game, gets a penalty, slots it high and middle, sends the keeper the wrong way. 2-1 up, which means that they can just lock up shot. Kanjinga had a chance to make it 3-1 with the keeper off their line, but Chavas saves this absolute perler, diving back and low, and has no right to save this shot, but keeps Paris FC in this game. Shout out to Graziani and Karchaoui for setting up Kanjinga for that moment as well. But Mary Earps makes a good save from Ndongala and her strike near post, but you're never going to beat Mary Earps at the near post. That's a really hard thing to do. De Almeida made up for her own goal as Kaja Korosek headed the ball across the box, and De Almeida gets a goal line clearance. And then the feisty moments of Alimbi bodying Bogart on the right wing, plays it to Kanjinga, Chavas and Hossein last-ditch defending to keep it alive. 2 minutes later, Liagre bombs down the other side, and then Graziani tries to trip her up and stop the attack, but she's on a yellow, chops her up, is sent off. PSG down to 9 players. Very soft, but also I love the drama. I love the derby. By the way, imagine this ref was reffing the Arsenal-Chelsea game, mate. Everyone would, mate. Lauren James off the pitch, McCabe off the pitch. You wouldn't have McCabe. Yeah, everyone's off the pitch in that game if you have this ref. But the last chance of the game is Bogart whipping to Sangare, who heads it up for Olga and Matteo to contest. Matteo absolutely launches over Olga, but can't get enough on it, and then Merps recovers it, seals the game. A great derby win, a big injury that looked for Matteo as she went down quite hard, but the ref blows the whistle, and that is it for what is an incredible rendition of this Parisian derby, and I'm excited to see more. And now I think there's a little bit more stakes, there's a little bit more like flavour in the mix after 2 red cards, 3 really big goals, really important goals, and some good moments to put together against each other.
This is a game that has had 7 in the last 10 be draws. Like, this is a very intense derby, and I think that it's not a derby that a lot of people think of or look to in the calendar, because Paris FC have really only become a team of focus since they have had UCL, and the UCL has been fantastic this season. They will continue to grow in accordance to the class of player that they have, which is, decent in terms of that Ligue 1 positioning, and a bit underwhelming in terms of that Champions League positioning. But I think what you said perfectly about this is it's intense, and it's rivalry, and it's everything we love. Like, we forget that this team is literally across the road from each other. It is the epitome of that Sunday league, like, old
Battle of the Bridge,
Exactly, that's it. And I love it. I think this was a fantastic game. It was a fantastic display, because, like, coming off the back of a 6-0, you kind of want something a bit more close, a bit more feisty, and that's what we got. I'm hoping that Paris FC eventually get a win over PSG, not in the same way as, like, you hope that Real Madrid get a win over Barca, in like the same way that they really deserve it. Like, Paris have shown to be a team of class this season, particularly against PSG. They've just been unlucky. I mean, just goalless draws. These 2 ones that, I mean, obviously the Grisani, like, that's like a very late red card. But I mean, 9 players, you kind of hope that they'd get a bit more out of it, especially having 10 men for 60 or so minutes. And look, PSG will go into their final against Lyon as the underdogs, as they have for the last decade and a half against Lyon. I still think that Lyon's going to win. It's just going to be about, like, game management. How can PSG hold this Lyon side?
I actually think they have to go for it. They have nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose anymore. You have to just go for it, and you have to get them on the fact that they're hyper fixated on Arsenal, and you can just get them later on in this league. And I know Lyon will be looking for the domestic treble. Obviously, they'll play as hard as they can to win their 3 trophies that they usually win every year. But it's about the quad for them. They're the only one left that is on for the quad, and I think it'll be an exciting precedent to see what they can do for that. But that is all we have. I mean, French football just heats up. It's been heating up the last few weeks. The nonces, the flurries, the absolute moments that have been happening for all these sides that show that French football is here and here to stay. They aren't this farmers league the way that it is in like the men's game that they talk about. It is a lot more well-rounded, and it means that the benches will keep warming in France, and we'll keep covering them. But that is all we have for France this week.